Well, really this is not a complicated teaching. It's, we talk about principle in religious science. And that's a fancy word that I really didn't understand until I was in the teaching for, I have to admit, at least 10 years. I heard it, but I didn't really get it. And I was teaching it, but I didn't really fully understand it. I was, knowing that I was demonstrating a reflection of consciousness when I was younger, I got that when I escaped my Catholic roots and I found myself in a unity church many years ago trying to figure things out. I knew that my thoughts were things. I knew that whatever I dwelled upon seemed to show up in some form. Though not exactly like I was, but I would draw to me some type of mirror of what was living inside of me. And I think most of us understand that on some level. You've seen it happen. Now, I didn't know anything about Ernest Holmes. I didn't know phrases like, there's power for good in the universe, and you can use it. I didn't know you could employ it. I didn't know you could put a demand upon it in any kind of way. That's all exciting stuff, but that I learned many years later. I knew in the beginning that there was something, some substance that responded to me. And I knew that everybody who taught me everything when I was younger taught it to me somehow wrong. That much I intuitively knew that what they were teaching me was not the way it worked. I, like many of us growing up in a Catholic, or I hate to pick on the Catholics, but it just happened to be what I was. But it could have been any fundamental belief, really. Anything that would suggest that God is outside of us is suspect in my eyes. Anything that would suggest that we're anything less than wonderful is suspect in my eyes. Anything that would suggest that there's something other is suspect in my eyes. I knew that when I was younger. And I remember my dad saying to me as a kid, he says, you must think you have a hotline to the Holy Ghost. He always said stuff like that to me. And I said, well, I said, but none of this stuff makes sense. And I gave him example after example. And my dear Aunt Reed, she was an unbelievable person in many respects. But I remember her whole family being excommunicated and not being able to receive sacraments. Because my Uncle Ed was in the Navy and he had many girlfriends in many places. And she was very bitter and she got divorced and she was not able to receive sacraments and she was enraged. And I can remember seeing none of this made any sense. None of it was logical. Nor could I understand that Asians and Buddhists and people of other faiths on planet Earth would not get into heaven because they weren't baptized and all that stuff. It made no sense. You don't have to be 30 or 40 to come to those conclusions. I think I was about 9 or 10, or certainly at the time I was 12 or 13. I didn't believe any of it anymore. Much to the chagrin of my mother with her rosary and all that other stuff. So it was an interesting experience being a kid. You have this information, you have a lot of self-knowledge. I did. And I also had an idea of who I was, and in the world I was raised in, I was not good enough. I wasn't going to meet the grade. If you're different and you're not fitting the norm, for women it's probably to be married at a certain time and have children and be the vision of whatever that is in your own family. For men it's to be something else. And God forbid you're a gay person. That wasn't acceptable in most people's families. So what are you going to do with yourself if you don't fit into what is popularly understood as what's good and right and moral and righteous even? What do you do with yourself and what you are by definition of your tribe is a sinner, flawed, fatally, eternally damned in some cases? That's a lot of stuff to overcome when you're a little kid. And there's usually not a lot of role models around there saying you're okay, you're wonderful. Your body is different, your belief is different, you're different. There's a huge pressure, when you're younger to try to fit into what people do and what they are and all of that. It isn't so much about cherishing you as an individual. and helping you flourish to be whatever you want to be. Your success is predicated upon becoming a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, or something. Marrying well. That's even an interesting expression. You don't hear it used much anymore. This person married well. What the hell does that mean? It's ridiculous, but yet it was used often. Probably still is in some places. I look at life as we're here for some 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and maybe if you're very, very, very lucky, you might live longer. And lucky because life is to be enjoyed. It's really an amazing, amazing thing just to be able to be conscious and to be aware and awake and know that you're a participant in a process that's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling to know that you exist and that you draw air and you can think and feel and breathe and interact with others. It's amazing how sweet it is. I always think of Jackie Gleason that line. I remember, it's the only thing I remember that show when I was a kid. You closing the show with how sweet it is. Well, life is, it can potentially. Or it can be, as the Catholics teach you, a veil of tears. I have all these things, the recesses of my mind, through my Catholic upbringing. A veil of tears, where you're to offer it up. Offer what up? Everything. And woe is me, and ain't it awful, and your rewards will come later. That's basically the whole teaching of, the Catholic Church. You're here, and life is a struggle. And you come in inferior. You have original sin. You're blemished from the get-go. And if you're saved, and if you get better, and you keep getting better, and if God came here to save the world from your sins. I mean, who believes in stuff like that? Does anybody? Apparently so. They aren't here. So anyway, life moves forward. It evolves. Not fast enough for me, quite honestly. Not fast enough for many of us. Ralph Waldo Emerson was talking about these very subjects in the 1800s. He wasn't particularly worried about the outcome, nor was Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes would suggest the healing has already occurred in the mind of God. It's a done deal. So, the thing is, you can't control what's going on in the world. The world evolves, and the world heals. And you're healing too, always, because it's what happens. There is a principle operating in you and through you that is always corrective, says Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is what it does. It is corrective by nature. It heals. You are not the same person that you were 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. You are not, you are not, you are not. You have grown, you have evolved, you're different. And you will continue to do so throughout the rest of your life. The question comes up is, how much good do you want to have in your experience? I mean, you hear me talk about similar ideas week after week. What do you approach the ocean of life with? Do you have a receptivity for great joy? Do you have a receptivity for connection? Are you able to forgive? Are you able to get back on track? Are you able to see yourself as a prosperous person? Are you able to be loving and giving and giving and loving and loving and giving, because it's all the same thing? Are you a hoarder? You hang on to stuff, or you do all that? Because any of that type of activity is really a belief in that you're not supplied and supported. So when I was younger, I didn't understand the word principle. But I did know that life responded in some level. When we're very young, we have what's called magical thinking. We think that we think and blink, blink, it's there. Maybe it is, but it doesn't. After a while, it doesn't work that way. During a time in a child's life, I've heard different people say it's like the lights go up. There's a time where there's the magical thinking where you just know some of this stuff. And then you get conditioned and it kind of like goes away for a while. And that's why people say, be like the children. Well, be like the children because the children have faith and trust and wonder, and oftentimes we don't anymore. We really get, some of us, into our stories to the point where we cannot see the truth anymore. I have a sister right now. I was dealing with my brother this week, and she is so caught up in her story of being right about what happened. It's through the administration of my mother's estate. She's like so dug in to who's right, who's wrong, and all that, and she's not talking to anybody in the family, and I'm thinking to myself, well, a lot of that stuff in her administration negatively impacted a few of us, particularly me. But I long ago forgave her because she was challenged with a very big job. And she didn't have a divining rod, and you know what? It was 4 or 5 years ago. But that's because I have this teaching. Things happen on a day-to-day basis, week to week, and do you want to carry that stuff with you to your grave? My dad taught me when I was a kid, he said, to err is human, to forgive divine. All of us are making mistakes all the time. And so what? I'll say it again. All of us are making mistakes all of the time. And so what? Louise Hay would say, everybody is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. I'd be willing to bet that most of you, myself included, my sister, all of us would do things differently in this new day with new information. Yet we're not able, many of us, to come forward into a new moment, embrace a new moment, forgive and love and forgive, because we're caught up in some ancient hurt. That's language from the Course in Miracles, an ancient hurt that cuts us off and denies us the experience of good in God. The question comes up, would you rather be right? Or would you rather be a connected and happy person? Would you rather be in this new moment and really have a new moment? Or would you prefer to be in a story? A story of them and us, or somebody done me wrong, and poor me, and ain't it awful? You have the ability with this teaching to practice this principle, to see the good when? All the time, right here, right now, because it's always with you. When I was younger, I was like a spiritual junkie. I still am in a way, but I don't go anywhere anymore. I used to go everywhere, be on a plane, in a train. Somebody had something to say, somebody was going to channel something, do something, flip a card, read a tea leaf, you name it, I damn well do it. And I don't do that anymore. I've kind of like come full circle on all. I don't have the need, the desire to go anymore. I do understand that everything I'm looking for is already here, in me, operating through me, as me. I sometimes have the need to slow it down. Slowing down the spin. Be here now. I don't believe in good energy and bad energy. And anytime anybody says it, I gotta tell you a little secret, I think you're crazy. Don't believe it. There is energy. There's life, there's love, there's the omnipresence. The omnipresence, it's it. There's nothing else. There never has been anything else. That's all there will ever be, is presence. When you awaken to that truly and stay awake, how sweet that will be. So it is.
So it is.